Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, it's time to take a look at the final episode of the day, Crossfire. Odo was in his office, carefully setting a cup of Roxygena for Major Kira, as she's due to arrive for their review of the criminal activity report. They're discussing First Minister Shakar's impending visit to the station when Quark barges in, complaining that Odo, whose quarters are above his, makes too much noise. Odo doesn't care and tells Quark that he'll listen to his complaint later, and after he leaves, the constable tells Kira that the fact that Quark's quarters are below Odo's is not a coincidence. Sometime later, Kira, Captain Sisko, Dax, Dr. Bashir, and Emily Flummoxed O'Brien are in the docking ring in full dress uniform, waiting to receive the First Minister as he steps out of his shuttle. Kira expresses some anxiety about the development of his public speaking skills. He used to mumble his way through mission briefings, and then Shakar steps out of the airlock with his adjutant, Suri Shrez. Introductions are made, and the complete party makes its way down to the promenade, which is thronged with crowds hoping for a glimpse of the First Minister while he makes a speech. Once they reach the promenade, Odo sends the communication to Sisko. I have reason to believe someone is planning to assassinate First Minister Shakar. In Sisko's office, after the speech, Odo reports that according to one of his sources on Cardassia Trueway, a Cardassia terrorist group who are already responsible for the deaths of two Bajoran officials, are planning to kill Shakar and are reported to already have an operative aboard the station. He encourages Shakar's adjutant, Charisse Rez, to cancel the upcoming conference and reschedule elsewhere, but the adjutant refuses. He argues that Bajor's admission to the Federation hinges upon the upcoming talks, and that as a former terrorist, the last thing Shakar intends to do is respond to terrorist threats. Sisko and Kira express their support for that sentiment, Kira noting that once the Cardassians started negotiating with the Bajoran resistance, they knew they were beaten, and Sisko orders station security to be increased. As Odo requests this Bajoran security detachment be augmented with Starfleet security. Sisko agrees and has them coordinate security matters with Lieutenant Commander Worf, as Lieutenant Commander Eddington is on leave. While discussing the increased security arrangements, Worf complains about the obstacles posed against maintaining station security, known as much simpler to when he was head of security of the USS Enterprise D. During the conversation, Odo and Worf discovered that they have significant preferences in common, especially their dislike for uninvited guests to their quarters. Sometime later, Odo meets with Shakar for the first time. They get acquainted while walking to the Bajoran temple, and Shakar makes a point of bringing up Kira's high regard for Odo. Then there's a reception in the wardroom. Kira mingles with Shakar's adjutant and with Odo, then decides to leave, only to be singled out by Shakar, who wants to be rescued. After a brief discussion, Kira and Shakar leave the wardroom together for a walk about nowhere in particular, well after they agree to be escorted by Odo, who is distressed by the rapport he sees developing between the two. Quark, who is serving the food at the reception, sees Odo's reaction and is astounded to realize the constable's feelings for Kira. The next day, Shakar's negotiations with the Federation over the subject of Bajor's accession to Federation membership are going poorly. As he walks with Odo from the wardroom back to his quarters, they find common ground over their shared perception of the Federation's inherent self-righteousness. Once they make it back to Shakar's quarters, he directs the conversation to the subject of Kira and admits to Odo that he thinks he's falling in love with her, an admission couched in language that echoes Odo's own feelings for Kira almost perfectly. Later, Odo is performing a security sweep with a Starfleet tricorder in the wardroom. He finds an eavesdropping device in a table setting and renders it useless. Though upset, Quark changes the subject to Odo's feelings without skipping a beat, correctly deducing Odo is in love with Kira and is worried that she is falling in love with Shakar. Odo furiously denies this and refuses Quark's attempts to give advice before stomping angrily out of the wardroom. The time comes for another review of the criminal activity report, but Kira shows up late and cuts the meeting short, so she promises to give Shakar a tour of the station. Odo is quietly disappointed and arranges security for the tour. On the tour through the station with Odo as an escort, Kira and Shakar are getting on better than ever. The two step through the wormhole for a few minutes. Shakar moves to kiss Kira, but backs up at the last instant, glancing at Odo. Instead, they move on, entering a turbolift and start beginning to make a date. Meanwhile, Worf's voice comes through on the comm line telling Odo he needs to control the turbolift as he needs to reroute the car. Odo has to work for security clearance first before he can release the controls. At that moment, Kira and Shakar agreed to dinner together, leading at a new bowling restaurant on the station. Odo was so distracted by this that he releases the controls before receiving and confirming Worf's codes, and the car suddenly goes into freefall. All the car's occupants discover that the combat signals have been dampened. Odo is only able to stop the turbolift using shapeshifting abilities to press the sides of the turbolift up against the walls of the station's turbo shaft, and nobody is injured. Impressively, he pushes the sides of the car, using friction to stop the descent. Odo participates in an after-action review with Cisco. The latter explains his surprise at the way things have transpired. It transpires that someone hacked into the comm system and faked Worf's voice. Cisco is confused at how the assassin had Worf's clearance code, and Odo's first admitted he didn't have the code, as Odo released the controls without confirming it. Captain Cisco is very surprised, and isn't sort of a mistake Odo would make, especially Odo's only explanation is that he got distracted. Odo asks Cisco not to push the subject further as he doesn't want to discuss it, and the captain agrees but warns Odo not to let it happen again. Also, no ships have been allowed to leave since the incident, meaning the would-be assassin is still somewhere on the station. Odo then goes to the security office, and doesn't stay for long after. Worf expresses dissatisfaction with Odo's level of attention to their investigation of the incident. He leaves for Kira's quarters, only for Ensign Jimenez once he gets to Kira's entertaining Shakar. Odo dismisses Jimenez early and takes over watching Shakar's quarters. Once the date finally ends, Kira's excited at the way in which things have developed. Odo can't bring himself to admit his feelings to Kira, much less how those feelings have hurt his job performance, and simply excuses himself. When Odo returns to his office, he finds something he had expected. Worf placing the True Way operative under arrest, as he was responsible for the assassination attempt and was planning to decompress Shakar's quarters by sabotaging the environmental controls. Odo was stunned, and realizes that he let Worf do his job for him. Worf senses Odo's discomfort and compliments him on the performance of his deputies. Odo is too shocked at the turn of events to acknowledge it. He returns to his quarters and considers his failures both with Kira and at his job. His shock turns to fury, and he starts smashing up his quarters in uncontrollable rage. Sometime later, Quark comes up with Odo's quarters to complain about the noise, and lets himself in when Odo doesn't respond. He enters to find Odo motionless, sitting on the floor amongst the wreckage. Stunned, Quark remarks that he always knew this would happen, taking the form of an animal that would eventually result in behaving like one. He berates Odo for his thoughtlessness and asks him what form it was. Klingon Targ? Trailing crocodile? Odo morosely responds that Quark was right. At first, Quark is bemused, but then realization dawns. He realizes if Kira and Shakar are together, which Odo despitefully nods and confirms. Quark, now in awe, admits that Odo is truly in love, remarking that he always thought Odo to be colder than a Breen winter. Odo's dismissive response and attempt to hide his despair softens Quark, who decides to tell his nemesis some home truths. Quark informs Odo that whenever there's an unusual crime committed on the station, he runs a betting pool on how long it'll take to catch the person responsible. The fact that such a pool exists speaks volumes about the kind of man Odo is, a man who will never give up on his quest to catch his man. Not a man who will smash up his furniture and then sit alone and rubble in the dark. He also tells Odo that he's got to make a choice, and to tell Major Kira's true feelings about her, forget all about her and move on with his life, because now his feelings are interfering with his job and Quark's profits. After gently assuring Odo that he wasn't speaking to him as a friend, Quark leaves Odo alone again with a lot to think about. Later, Odo, back to his normal composure, suspect Kira's quarters inform her he won't be able to continue with her weekly meetings due to scheduling additional training for his deputies, and that he can't fit her in anywhere else as the schedule is over full. Kira's disappointed as she enjoyed the meetings and asks Odo if something is the matter. But Sim tells her he wants to use the time more efficiently, and Kira knows there's no point in pushing him and lets the matter drop. Odo later goes to Quark's, where the bartender tells him that, according to a rumor, the negotiations have gone very well and the timetable for Beatrice's admittance for a Federation membership has been cut in half. Quark also thanks Odo for soundproofing the floor of his quarters, Odo tells Quark that he was just having the floor reinforced and that there's no way he put up with 3 days of construction in his quarters just for him. He then spots Kira and Shakar leaving a hall suite and joining each other's company. Odo just leaves and begins his rounds. Aww, poor Odo. So anyway, let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. The plan which Odo destroys against the wall to begin his rampage was given to him in the abandoned by Kira, and the pot was a bucket Odo had previously used when he regenerated to a liquid state, making the structure of the plant and the pot highly symbolic. The sequence with Shakar's ship docking Deep Space Nine was the reuse of the body ship that first appeared in Move Along Home. The Trueway received its second of 2 mentions this episode. It was previously referred to in the episode Armand Bashir. Kara Lofton does not appear in this episode. Sisko is back to wearing his usual uniform in this episode. So overall, yeah, I just feel really bad for Odo because, he wants to tell Major Kira, because he wants to tell Kira how badly he loves her, but unfortunately that can happen because of Shakar. So yeah, thanks a lot, Shakar. Thanks a lot. So overall, I give Crossfire 3 warp cores out of 5. Anyway, tune in tomorrow as we take a look at the next episode, Return to Grace. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.